We're going to begin in Philippians chapter 4. If you want to turn there, it's going to be on the screen, so you don't have to, but if you want to, you can turn there. I received, in preparation for this sermon, or lesson, update, however you want to call it, I received two sets of instructions. One was from the elders to make this wonderful and encouraging, and the other one was from my wife to not embarrass her. And I'm confident that one of those will happen, but probably not both. So we'll start there. Thank you so much for everyone being here, even though Ben warned us last week I'd be here. Thank you. It's my honor to put this material together, which is a lot of material that we got to go through, so we'll be quick. But put it together and submit it on their behalf. It's really encouraging to speak to these men and to email back and forth, and I hope you're encouraged by it. To our visitors, I'm obviously not the full-time preacher, so come back next week. The Gages are with us. Cindy and Garrett, it's really good to see y'all. Russ is here too, so make sure y'all say hi. All right, that's enough of that. Let's get to it. So, and I got my slide, or my clicker. Okay. This is the most nerve-wracking part of this, so I'm going to get this. All right, so first and foremost, it's always good for us to revalidate to ourselves, do we have authority in our church, in our lives to do whatever it is? And it's no different here. Stu mentioned 2 Corinthians 9. He read from a little bit ago. That's another great place to go. Here I'll read quickly from Philippians chapter 4, starting in verse 15. Now you Philippians know also that in the beginning of the gospel, when I departed from Macedonia, no church shared with me concerning giving and receiving, but you only. For even in Thessalonica you sent aid once and again for my necessities. Not that I seek the gift, but I seek the fruit that abounds to your account. Indeed, I have all and abound. I am full, having received from Epaphroditus the things sent from you, a sweet-smelling aroma, an acceptable sacrifice, well-pleasing to God. So we have a clear example here from the Apostle Paul that we are not only allowed to do this, but fully encouraged, and there's a level of fellowship that goes along with this. All right. So what criteria do we use? Because it's not just, we get so many requests for support that we have to have some type of criteria. This is what the elders have chose. I went one too far. First and foremost, the evangelist has to commit to evangelistic activities at least 25% of his time. And what that means is basically he's not just staying in one church just doing sermons or whatever it might be. He's actually seeking the lost, going out, trying to engage in one-on-one Bible studies. And secondly, target an area that is underrepresented, underserved from the gospel. And that's kind of subjective. Cali, Columbia, that's a prime example. Louisville, Texas, you can argue like, well, there's churches within driving distance, so maybe that's not exactly what we're looking for. Those are the types of things you have to go look into. Lastly, it's not on here, but also willing to report their activities. And that's, we get a lot of reports from these guys. Usually we ask for about once a month. But it can come in once a quarter or something like that. So moving on, why have this update? We only have one sermon each week. There's 52 weeks in a year. This arguably takes up a good amount of time. Is it important? And first and foremost, transparency. This is a lot of money that gets sent in, and the elders, and I don't want to speak on their behalf, but it's good for all of us to know where the money goes and what it's supporting. Quick game, within $10,000 in your mind, how much do you think our annual budget is for outside preachers? So this is completely outside, sending money overseas or to other states or wherever it might be. In your mind, think about that, because it's going to be on the next slide, and I just want to see were you in the ballpark, because until I started doing this, I had no idea, and it's a lot more than I thought. Edification, hopefully you're encouraged by this. This is one of the pictures behind me. From a report in the Philippines. We're going to talk about Brother Rody in a little bit. But the other thing, too, is I don't want to come across that this is just good news. This is very serious business. A lot of these guys face danger. I mean, the COVID's out there for the entire world. It's not all good news. And I want to share, candidly the facts with you on that. So there's bad news as well. Prayers. We covet prayers on these guys' behalf. We're going to get into prayers a little bit more. And then also perspective and giving, and I'll lump those two together. There's so many opportunities to give that if you're ever just super, super blessed and you want to do more, let us know. There's always opportunities things happen that we have to turn away because we just can't fund everything. That's what it comes down to. All right, let's get into it. So 2020, 2021, here's our, just a summary. We support 28 preachers last year. 26 of those guys are full-time, that we support them on a continuing monthly or bi-monthly basis. And then 2 preachers, Carlito Abella in the Philippines, and also our brother Anthony Ginton. He comes on Wednesdays every once in a while. Y'all might know him. We support them occasionally. So the 2020 budget, $206,000, a little more. So in your mind, was that more or less? It's a lot more than I thought when I took it over. And that counts for over 40% of the annual budget for the church. So it's a big, big deal. Commendation to all of y'all. We didn't have to make any budget cuts in 2020 to these guys, and they really appreciate it. And that, I'll tell you, was not the norm. Most of them took budget cuts from churches, and that hurt them significantly. So I, again, really appreciate all of our continued support for all of you. And then what was the results? The results were dozens of baptisms. I put dozens because I want to be conservative. It literally could be into the hundreds. I just didn't want to throw out some crazy number. And then there's over 2,000 Christians that are serviced by these men, either hearing the gospel or being edified each week. There's over 61 churches that hear the gospel because of us and other Christians around the world that are able to support these gentlemen. And then we talked about taking action in a second, or praying. I would ask you, don't just sit back and say, oh, we're doing such a great job, I'm going to look at this and feel good about myself. Take notes on what can I pray on. That's what I'm asking you for today. Pick 3 or 4 things, specific things, and pray about those things, because there's a lot of need that's out there. And then how this presentation is set up, there's 4 geographic regions. There's the Philippines, South Africa, Latin America, and the United States, and that's kind of what we're going to go in. We'll start off with the United States in a second, and I had to pick a couple of guys to highlight. And highlight's a bad word, because all of these guys, they're devoting their lives to the gospel, and we can't pick anything. These guys generate, I think last year it's between 300 and 400 reports. So they're each sending either a bi-monthly report or a monthly report, so there's a lot of information, so we had to pick some. So there's going to be a couple of highlights, and then we'll move on. All right, so for our LSU fans in the audience, this is the United States. And the men that we support here, we're going to specifically talk, this is kind of a map of it. Specifically, we're going to talk about Alberto and then Lee Tosti in Ithaca, New York. So Alberto is right now, it's here in Louisville, but he preaches in the Iglesia de Cristo in Flower Mound, so a Spanish-speaking church there. They have 52 members. The big highlight this last year for them is they were actually able to establish elders. And, we have history of that, and I'm sure the elders here and everyone knows kind of the struggles that go into that. So please pray for them. And they're going to be, this was December. I assume they've already established deacons. Sorry for not getting that information. But pray for them. Pray for wisdom and unity as they begin that process. And then keeping with Alberto, this is from the December 2020. And again, disclaimer, I only speak English. I'm going to butcher a lot of words today. So please, you can make fun of me later if you want. So Alberto writing says, Wilder Acosta and I traveled to the city of Chilpancingo, Guerrero, Mexico. The plan to help and assist the brothers who are there together with Brother Jorge Ramirez. The result of this trip was very encouraging. 5 people baptized for their forgiveness of sins. Thanks be to God in this place. There are already 8 members in this church. Now think of the perspective right there. There are already 8 members here. Wow. It's like, guys, that's not a ton. That is a ton when you're starting a church. And between 13 and 15 people meet every Sunday. And just for context, because we talked a little bit about perspective, I had the opportunity in once in my life to be a member of a church that only had about 15 members. The elders, when you become a member here, you get a little sheet and they ask you what you want to partake in, right? And it's like, well, I'm not really good at song singing, so I'm going to stay away from that one. In a church like this, guess what? If you're a man, you're going to sing. You're going to lead sermons. You're going to do everything. And the women too. Oh, they're not, what I'm trying to say. There's going to be a lot of activities going on in a place like this. So please, pray for this young church. And, my clicker. So where are they going to be baptized at, right? So when I first saw this, I was like, maybe they might have misunderstood, buried in baptism, but that's not what it is. Think about this. So this is, I believe, this is Alberto right here. Isn't that neat? Like pictures like this, and we have a couple more. Again, perspective. Like taking what I assume was a flower pot or some type of gardening pot and being able to clean it out, put water in it, and use that. Again, perspective. Like we have it really, really good. And we're going to talk, again, there's so many examples of this, but I just love pictures like this. It's amazing. So again, please pray for new Christians as they come. And so our next one. So Lee Tosti in Ithaca, New York. He lives in Elmira, which is also where we support a man by the name of Joe Works. They go to church together there, but Lee is specifically working day in and day out in Ithaca, New York. Ithaca is a very, very, we'll get into some candid feedback about what exactly it is in just a second. But he's trying to establish a church there. That's where Cornell University is. And it's not super successful so far, but we'll get into it again. So just to quote Lee here, this is from August. This is when he first moved there. He relocated there with his family. And this is very candid. It's brutally candid in its assessment. So Ithaca is a tolerant city, is aggressively plastered on all the city's web pages. When I was first in line at a red light, when a tall man dressed in high heels and a very short miniskirt with blouse unbuttoned, predominantly displayed ladies' wear underneath, walked in a crosswalk in front of the cars, looking at each car, pointing at each car, verbally taunting each driver. The homeless and beggars were prominent. Sitting in one of the main city parks, a very nice park, the homosexuals caressed each other just like in the Walmart line and the county clerk's office, while marijuana smoke wafts gently through the air, and I sit there reading my Bible with my Bible study right here, right now, come on over sign. And again, he told me about the guy going in the crosswalk. He had his family with him, right? And his young child was like, "Look, Daddy, what is that?" It's not a good place. Now, obviously, there's might be good people there, but again, we're kind of reminded of places like Sodom and Gomorrah and different things. We think of Matthew 5, and when we read about, we are lights of the world, and we shouldn't be hidden. We need to be put on a lampstand. Think about this, and the reason I use this example coupled with his picture there is the contrast of this is the darkness, and here is the light. And again, it's just you're humbled by some of these guys' stories and what they go through. And this Bible study with David, and if you'll just bear with me, so Lee sends really good reports that are posted on our website. We'll get into a little bit of that later. But he's going to talk about a guy that he met there named David. And he says, "There is also David. If I completely commit to the Lord, do I have to give up all other gods I have benefited from?" he asked, me sobbing. David's childhood was very traumatic. Then David deployed to Afghanistan about 10 years ago and suffered PTSD ever since. Then David spent years learning about many religions and gods, including visiting many holy sites around the world. And David prayed all the time at these sites, and he would not feel separated from God. Again, when I met David about a month ago, with all these wrestlings and sadness, he considered joining the 12 tribes. And just side note, the 12 tribes, it's you can Google it, it's pretty interesting actually, but it's kind of it's a cult. It's a religious sect. They change your name when you come into it. You can't own any possessions. You sell everything. And so he's, spiritually, you're reading this, is a man that is suffering, and he's flailing around looking for purpose. And so he's thinking about joining this cult. So he was going to stay with them for 2 weeks, kind of sort of a trial run. But he asked if he could continue texting with me. And we did. And when the 2 weeks had ended, actually before, he asked to meet with me again. After we had talked for an hour, I was about to ask him what he wants from me when he volunteered that he wants me to help him understand the Bible, how to understand God, or how to honor God, if complete submission to God requires complete submission to the 12 tribes, if complete submission to God requires completely giving up all the possessions, including his dear PTSD service Labradoodle, and which the 12 tribes had told him he must do. And Lee goes on, so this was back in December when this happened. Lee goes on each month to give it a report of how it's coming with David. And you see this progress that he's taking, right? He's asking better questions. He's reading through the Psalms. He's reading through John. He's making progress in how he's viewing things. His life is getting back together. And Lee is sending these reports out, and he's saying, like, pray for him, but I think it's close. Like, he's making progress. About this time, David asked him if Lee will have a Bible study with some of these 12 tribes members. And it doesn't go well. They talk over him, and there's no reasoning. After a second study like that, David walks Lee out to his car, and he says, hey, I really appreciate everything you've done for me. I'm actually going to go back in there, and I'm going to join these guys right now. And just complete loss, right? And if you've ever studied, a lot of people here, like you read the personal evangelism reports out, Bible study's hard, and it's emotional. And, you start thinking, and because Lee, he was really down about this, which he probably wouldn't say that, but, you start analyzing, like, what I could have done better? Obviously, God's word is truth. I must have done something where I either misread the situation, I didn't go to the right passage. What could I have done better, right? And thing is, we have to learn continuously, but it's not us that has to obey the gospel. It's other people. We are just the vessel of truth that we read. And the other thing, too, is you have to have a little bit of humility, knowing that you don't know everything that's going to happen or what good can come from it. So right after this, Lee gets this email, if I can get it. So this is from a woman by the name of Lisa that was friends with David, that she goes, and she was apparently at those Bible studies, is my understanding. And so she gets this. And she says, David's lady friend Lisa contacted Marcy and me. Marcy is Lee's wife. Last night, and this is what she wrote. She said, David, which they take your name, make you change your name, went to the tribes last Monday, a challenging transition for him, friends, and family. What version of the Bible do you recommend I begin studying? And we have a Bible study scheduled for 3 p.m. Saturday. And as of June report, he's still studying with Lisa. So the lesson here is, you don't know. Preach. Spread the word. Try. Because someone's parent that you don't even know is in there, or girlfriend or wife, husband, whatever it might be, could be affected by your words. So, dust the sand off your feet and get back in there. Lee is maybe looking to relocate this fall, so he solicits your prayers too. If again it's unsuccessful with either Lisa or others in establishing a church in Ithaca. And then also, Lee, I sent him a text right before when I was putting this together and asked, like, hey, is there anything you want me to add, on your behalf? And side note, I've known Lee for 10 years. We were members of the same church, and he's got a quirky personality like myself, and he sends me this, and I couldn't help but put it in there. So, and then obviously looks is not one of our requirements, so I won't bore you with that. So we'll get into the Philippines. Philippines, obviously, Southeast Asia. We have 11 full-time preachers that we support full-time. That means a check goes out once a month or bi-monthly. And again, I meant to put this in one of my opening slides. The unsung hero with all of this, Bill Wilson. We really appreciate your efforts. He's the one that's in charge of sending money every single month. And, preachers, just like normal people, really enjoy getting paid correctly and on time. And he does that. And you think about it, going through, it's not, Venmoing someone that lives in Dallas. This is, you're sending internationally, Western Union, a bunch of different things, and he does a great job, and that's a lot of work every single month. So thank you very much for your efforts there. We're going to talk specifically about Rhodey right here, and then we're going to talk about Rickley, Lumipay down here, and then we're going to briefly mention, he's not on the screen, but Carlito Abea, he's the one we did a one-time support for. And so, Rickley and Geneva Lumipay. Now, again, forgive me, this is wordy. I'm going to read a good bit of it. Don't fall asleep. Just stay with it. This is perspective. That was my point in doing this. All right, June 1st, 2021. So this is last month. The whole month of June, our province was under general community quarantine. And again, side note, a really amazing thing. It's not amazing because it's terrible, but it's a hidden, I don't even know if blessing is the right word, but perspective is just everyone in the world is going through the same thing with COVID. Now, there's certain countries pulling out of it, but we have this shared adversity. And so reading their reports is like, oh yeah, quarantine, how about that? Oh yeah, face masks, face shields, no one likes them, everybody hates them. Like that's a thing that we share, and we share with all Christians all over the world. It's really interesting. But okay, so the whole month of June, our province was under general quarantine, community quarantine due to many COVID cases, but worship in a meeting place is allowed, but 10%, only at capacity, and must wear mask, face shield, and always observe social distancing. 17-year-olds below and 66 years old and above are not allowed to go. So think about, again, the Philippines is not the United States. There's a lot more rules and restrictions. Kids 17 and under, you're done. You're at home, like, for the last however many months. And if you're over 66, same thing goes for you. And there's a lot more government involvement. Dropping down to the second paragraph here. Brethren, please continue to pray for our brethren here, for many of them are greatly affected of this pandemic, for some of them was not able to go to work. And also, it is still rainy seasons in our place, and that makes many of our brethren got caught fever and flu. Please continue to pray for me and my wife this past week. One of our brethren mother-in-law died, and I was requested to preach every night a week to all the relatives. So she passes away, the relatives need comforting. That's his job. He's stepping up, him and his wife. He's going to go, he says preach to them. I'm sure it's comforting and maybe giving lessons of perspective of life. But check this out. My wife is always with me, and every time we go home, we always encounter of rains, and we ride only in my single motorcycle, and that's why we have caught the flu for a week now. And you're like, hold on. He's going to go, him and his wife, on a motorcycle in like typhoon-type weather and rain to preach to other members of the church. Like, that's amazing. We have it so good, and I mean, now it's like, well, my car, it's getting up there and mileage, I think I better need a new one, or, I have two cars, and it's amazing. I don't know what I did. All right. Moving on to Carlito. Again, this is a one-time support payment. The activities we had this month had a special consideration from the government. As long as we practice the protocol both in the local and national government, we thank them and other frontliners who allow few activities to be made with their restrictions. Now think about Carlito, his attitude in this regarding the government. Again, Americans are not known for just loving their government, right? Like, I'm going to get on Facebook, I'm going to say whatever. Here, it is so much like Paul of being, I am all things to all men, right? Whatever, like, here's the gospel, it is my preeminent reason to exist. Everything else is submissive to that. His identity, everything. He's going to go, he's actually, the point I wanted to tell you here, he's preaching to the police officers. This is an actual government organization that they're sitting down and preach, and he's preaching and studying with them. And you can see their face masks and their shields, and they have Bibles open. Like, where in the U.S. would you see this? With a government organization in uniform sitting down, hearing the gospel. It's so encouraging, and again, it's a perspective that I think we need to have as far as, if he went to these guys and they're like, hey, you're really hassling us, I don't like wearing a mask, I have this problem, what do you mean I can only have 10% of my people in church, whatever it might be. No, he doesn't do that. He's, okay, I'll go with your restrictions because I'm obeying the government. You want to have a Bible study. And again, perspective is just like, it's mind-boggling to at least me. So getting into Rhodey, and we had briefly, I'll show you where he was. He's kind of the bottom part of the country. Or no, he's in the middle, excuse me. So Rhodey, I went too far, I'm sorry. All right, this is back in November. So Rhodey Gumpag, his father is also named Rhodey, but this is Junior, okay? So and that'll come into play in a second. Our last Sunday in Tuguegarao City, attended church service at Metro Church, that's outside Manila, and in the afternoon I went to Baliwag. From the afternoon preaching, I preached to them a very encouraging lesson, which resulted in 4 precious souls confessing their faith. It was raining heavily that day, but this didn't stop this 4 souls to be baptized. So it's raining, it's pouring, 4 people hear the message, and they want to be baptized. So we went to the river, which is just a kilometer away and can be reached by car. The river current was so strong, but still they did insist to be baptized. I was so moved and so encouraged at the faith of this new brethren has. May all glory be to God. I attached some pictures taken from that day. And this is them hearing the lesson. This is in their church, and those are the 4. The fourth believe it's a lady. She's right here. You can't really see her on the other side of this young man. That's them. And when he said the river was strong, yeah, it is. Can you imagine, again, perspective, and this is just an ongoing lesson. What mother here would let their kid go down into that to be baptized? Like, I hope everybody, but again, I would be very nervous with this. And they're so happy. Oh, that's me, sorry. So just letting that sink in. And I think that's Rhodey holding the umbrella, so no one says preachers aren't smart, all right? So, all right, so the update from Brother Ron Halberg. Ron is a brother that lives in Kentucky. He works a lot with these brothers and sisters in the Philippines. He travels there a couple times a year, not since COVID, but he does preacher training programs, and he's a lot more integrated there than a lot of times we are. So we take his recommendations a lot on things. So he's on this last Sunday, this is July 4th, Rhodey and Tessie, that's Rhodey the senior, tested positive for coronavirus, and so did their sons Junior, who we just saw, and Junior's son and Jay. Oxygen was administered to Rhodey because of his breathing. The government put him in quarantine facility under lockdown. And on Wednesday, this is, I think this was this last Wednesday, a couple days ago, Junior was hospitalized suffering with pneumonia, and Jay was also hospitalized. Jay's wife and 2 children tested positive, were also hospitalized. Remdesivir shots were given to Junior and Jay in the hospital at a cost of $200 each. And so Rhodey's, I don't know his specific condition, but it can't be good. And again, this is $200 a shot. By the context here, it looks like there's multiple ones. And just for context too, preachers here average monthly income is about $800. So that's less than $10,000 a year. This is, I mean, that's a shot is a quarter of your income at least. So pray for them. It wouldn't surprise me if we have some requests come in for help from hospital bills coming in. But please pray for that situation. All right, moving on to Latin America. Latin America, before this year, we just supported Nestor down here in Chile. We added Pablo, Camilo, and David, 2 in Colombia and 1 in Ecuador this last year. So these came heavily by the recommendation of Brother Anthony Ginton. Again, he comes on Wednesdays. Talk to him. He's a great source for information. It's really encouraging to get to know him. We're going to highlight Camilo Avila, that he's in Popayán, Colombia. This is Camilo up in here in the top right corner. He just had his baby, first baby back in June, so he's proud father there. He is a preacher at 2 churches. One has 31 members and the other has 14. And I chose this kind of highlight right here with the young lady getting baptized because it's Zoom. Like, how many of us before this year knew what Zoom was? I don't even know when the company was founded, but this is a thing that even in Latin America, like, they're all over it. They're doing Zoom classes for people in Brazil and Colombia and Mexico, all over the place. The Latin American preachers are big into Zoom, and it's great. But I thought it was a really, really cool thing seeing this young lady baptized here. And then also, this is her, I think it's in June. This is a couple months later. And they're following up with her. So again, this isn't baptized, you're done, we're moving on. It's a continuous thing, just like here, just like for the entirety of the gospel has existed for all time, that it's a growth process, and these guys are doing a phenomenal job. And one thing I did want to point out as far as culture, look at this down here. When's the last time we had a lesson on the Virgin Mary? You're like, well, we don't really, I mean, yeah, we could study that, and there's probably some that need it, maybe. It would be healthy, but there's a strong Catholic influence down there, right? So again, customizing lessons to who needs it in that area. And this is something that, if one of us went down there to preach, like, yes, we could probably do it. But again, coming from a local preacher, this means so much more, and it's so much more effective. All right, so on to South Africa. South Africa is Warren Schultz. And he lives in the northeast part of the country. Most of you are probably familiar with Warren. He's been here, I think, several occasions. It's been a couple of years now, but he gives amazing lessons and updates. And Warren his methodology or understanding of his job is really fascinating. And when we talked about that criteria slide, this is said a lot more eloquently than I can say it. And I'll get into that in just a second. Warren, he has his home church in South Africa, but then he also travels to Botswana and Zimbabwe, and there's over a dozen churches between the two, and almost 500 or a little over 500 members of those churches. It's really an amazing work. But his view of his job, his existence, is my main objective as an evangelist will remain, as always, to reach out to areas in the bush and teach the world where no church exists. I then teach people to be baptized and establish a work in that village or area. I then train the men to lead these congregations from song leading to preaching, Bible classes, and once I see the congregation is strong, I look for new opportunities to start again. Like it's a continuous cycle. Start a church, train the men, get them somewhat self-sufficient, move on, and then check back in to make sure they're growing in the faith. And it's working. I mean, it's an amazing work. Answer prayers in Zimbabwe. So if you've been here for a while, we have supported. Seems like this continuous call for dire need and help that has come out of Zimbabwe and Botswana because of famine. These are subsistence farmers. They grow corn, and they have been suffering from so much drought over the last several years that they literally haven't been able to feed themselves. And there's been this call continuously of we need help. We need help. Y'all have answered that so many times, and they're so thankful you literally kept them alive, these Christians in these churches. But good news, this last year, it was the best rainy season in 8 years. And they were able, it says, the good news in Zimbabwe is that our brethren have started to harvest their crops. Everyone is upbeat, and you can feel the atmosphere of excitement in the air. Our brethren grow crops not only to supply their own food needs, but excess is sold to pay school fees, buy clothes, and other necessities, which they have not been able to for some years now. I'm so happy for them. Our God is so good. And just think about the blessing of this in light of COVID, right? Everything else is falling apart, but there's still something to be thankful for. And we're so thankful for that, which then frees up those funds to then help brethren in the Philippines or in New York or wherever it might be. Let's see. This picture is from Ben. I don't want to get sued. I want to make sure he gets credit for sending me some pictures. This is the congregation, or one of the congregations he is an evangelist at. But again, perspective. In your mind, someone asks you, what is a church? Well, it's not a building, right? Like, we know that. But then, okay, well, what constitutes a church? Well, we have a building, and you kind of go into that. But not really. And it's always amazing to kind of balance our American rich view of the world to what the vast majority of the world looks like, and bring that scope back down of what a true church is. And it's the people, and they're meeting under a tree. Now think about this too. Go back, what was it, to this time last year? No, not this time, probably spring of last year when we were meeting in the parking lot, and people were worried, like, oh, it's going to be hot, like, summer's coming, and it's, what are we going to do, and we're sitting in our cars with air conditioning, right? It's like, don't run out of gas. But think about this, and, look at this lady's face. Like, is that not cool? There's just something pure about pictures like this and congregations like this. I'm going to get into kind of Warren's special need now. There is requests that I'm going to bring to y'all's attention that if you want to contribute to, you can. He's asking to replace his vehicle. So over the last 4 to 6 years, he's had the same vehicle. And that's what this is the food, one of the pictures that Ben sent me, the food that he's delivered over the years. So his vehicle's taken a lot of, his truck has taken a lot of toll on the roads. And here's some picture of I didn't do that, I promise. All right. You can kind of see the muddy, it's not like our roads here, and again, with the American view of infrastructure. There's crossing, there's uncertainty, I'm sure there's debris in the roads. I mean, look at that. And then, pretty cool, we're actually going to get to, we asked Warren if he would mind doing a video for us to kind of show and give a better example of what, the trials he's facing, and specifically about replacing his vehicle. And so we're going to get into that. Real fast, before I do that, I did want to read a little bit of an update to add some more context. He says, this time around, my truck has taken an extra beating, as for the most of the 4 years I have been riding in heavy loads of maize meal. That's the food that he gives the brethren out there during the drought season. To our brethren over the rugged roads and over the above my normal trips. On my last 2 trips I have had some challenges. First, a clutch issue, which I managed to slowly drive in first gear to help, which, side note, can you imagine driving into multiple countries in first gear? That doesn't sound like fun. And then on my last trip, a suspension issue, which forced me to leave my truck and walk for help. When we returned about 6 hours later, they had stripped my wheels off and spares, and it cost me $2,600 for the tow-in and new wheels. And he says, I'm trying to raise funds of $33,000 to replace my pickup, which will service the work again for at least 4 to 5 years, Lord willing. And so we're going to have a video from Warren right here. All right, I was told to give it a second for the sound, and then click once. Oh, I messed it up. I'm sorry. No.
Hi, brethren. A good Dumela from Africa. Name is Warren Scholes. I thought I'd just give you guys an update on what's happening. I've been an evangelist for the last 22 years in Africa, and West Main has been supporting me for the last 19 years of those 22 years. Thank you for your support and your love. It's always appreciated. Thank you for helping our brethren over the years with food and getting them the hungry fed. We really appreciate all you do. They appreciate all you do. And we're always humbled by the willingness of the American brethren to give and to help out here in Africa. And without support from brethren like you, this kind of work would not be possible. I travel into Zimbabwe and to Botswana on a regular basis. This requires a lot of travel. And I would normally be over in the States sort of every 4 to 5 years and be giving a small presentation on the work. Unfortunately, as with the rest of the world, COVID has put brakes on that for us. But my vehicle still has been rolling on the roads, and up until I'm doing an average of about 4,000 to 5,000 miles a month with that vehicle. And with the extra loads of feeding brethren over the last couple of years, it's really put that bucky on bad roads under heavy loads, and it's taken quite a battering. I currently have 240,000 miles on the clock, and small things starting to go on the pickup. The work I do is always in remote areas of the bush. There's no help, there's no one you can call, there's no cell phone coverage, and especially in Zimbabwe, there's a lot of dangers if you are caught without a bucky or without a vehicle and you're on your own. They strip the vehicle or they'll mug you. So it's very important for the work and for me and for my wife's sanity to have a good vehicle that's reliable, that will get me in and out of these areas and back home safely. And those are the challenges we're having here in Africa, is that the cost of vehicles are extraordinarily high, and it's very costly to try and replace this vehicle. And I'm pleading to everyone who can help to get this vehicle replaced and get me back on the road and with a reliable vehicle and with peace of mind. Any help will be greatly appreciated. With the COVID-19, some of the tests and the challenges we're having, if you go across the border, you have to have a COVID test that's only valid for 72 hours. So you've got to be back within that 72 hours. And it's been tough, like it has been for the rest of the world. But we all have been safe and we all have been healthy. And we always thank you for your blessings of prayer and your help and your love and the reaching out to us and the words of encouragement. We really appreciate those. I thank you again for your love and support. Ivy says hello, and she sends her love to everybody over there. And we pray that you stay healthy and faithful, and Lord willing, we'll see you soon.
All right. Thank you, Cody, for figuring out how to do that. That was actually difficult, is my understanding of how to get all of that technical stuff worked out. So thank you very much for allowing that message to come through. If you do want to give as it relates to that, I see the elders or myself, and we can figure out the logistics with that. Again, it's very, very needed work. So again, in conclusion now, why do we have this update? One, obviously transparency, but then I did want to bring in the point about the preacher reports each month. That's something that traditionally, I will speak for myself, until I took this position, I didn't read. I didn't know, like, preacher reports, what are you talking about? They're actually stored on our website. I neglected to store them for about a year, so I'm going back on a lot of it. But 2021's up there. So if you want to go back and read the new ones, they're there. They're on the members section of the website. You log into your profile, and you have all access to that. I'm going to send out an email, Lord willing, this afternoon with about 5 of those, just to go through them when you have time, peruse them, and check it out, and you can kind of see exactly what these guys are going. Because, like I said, it was kind of the tip of the iceberg today as far as what we talked about. There's so much more. I hope you were edified and got something out of it. Pray, please. Like I said, take a little bit of notes and then pray today when you have time. And I hope that the perspective you have now, or at least maybe a little bit, is how fortunate and lucky we are. No matter what your circumstances is, I don't think many of us would volunteer just to trade places with a lot of these men. And if you do, go for it. But what they do is so amazing, and I hope that you just please don't take your blessings from God for granted, because I'm continuously reminded about this from these guys. And then lastly, just in conclusion, before we give an invitation, how do we, it relates to how we feel about our possessions that we have. This is from David in 1 Chronicles. But who am I and who are my people that we should be able to offer so willingly as this? For all things come from you, and of your own we have given you. Everything that we have in this life that is a blessing comes from God. It is God's. We're just stewards of it in this life. It's going to pass away. What are we but a vapor? We appear for a short time and then vanish away. And it would help us so much, again, like I think, continually be reminding of men like this and challenges that they face helps us to really, truly have that relationship with our possessions in this life. By way of an invitation, before we stand and sing, and the lesson today is yours. One, thank you for sitting and not throwing anything and being involved in this. But by way of invitation, in Acts 2, verse 38, Peter has a sermon, and he convicts the Jews, and the Jews are cut to the heart, or pierced to the heart, and they say, basically, what do we need to do to be saved? In verse 37, it says, now when they heard this, they were cut to the heart and said to Peter and the rest of the apostles, men and brethren, what shall we do? And in context of everything that we just talked about today, that same question is asked all over the world, and it has been for 2,000 years. And what's neat and cool, and all those words that make it sound flippant, the answer is the exact same. It's the same in Louisville as it is in Cali, Colombia, as it is in Manila, as it is in Johannesburg, South Africa, all over the world. In verse 38, we get the answers. Then Peter said to them, repent and let every one of you be baptized in the name of Jesus Christ for the remission of sins, and you shall receive the gift of the Holy Spirit. The gospel is not complicated. Truth is not complicated. Men make it complicated. And so this is your time now that you have to respond if you have need, or if you have circumstances that you need the prayers of the church, you have this time to come forward if you need it. Thank you so much.